That's awesome.
Yeah, I probably have a for you. All right, here we go. So I got that. Go.
Okay, so Robin theory basically was it was a company by the name of General Motors shutting down the streetcar industry, replacing them with electric streetcars, and increasing the population of Los Angeles by massive numbers. And um, yeah,
Replacing wasn't replacing with cars?
yeah, it replaced still.
No streetcars. So they have to drive General Motors cars.
Well, all the streetcars were replaced with like buses and like I don't really know where this came about, but they are gas powered cars, but they called them electric streetcars. And I really don't know why, but they replaced them with like buses and trains and subways and cars.
So cars they had to buy from General Motors.
I guess.
Yep. Okay, go ahead.
I think that we.
Did you get past this one? Let me move the mouse for you. Done. There we go. Okay.
So, well, that is not what I was saying. So.
Do you need to go one more?
No, this is. Oh, whoa.
So we have this.
Yeah.
Then we have this.
Yeah.
This.
Whoa. That was good.
Okay, good.
So there was a fund put out for the Union Station of Los Angeles, and basically the fund was fully replacing all the streetcars with other transit lines and like buses, cars, subways, stuff like that. And this plays off of how like people thought it was more the cars were more sanitary and better for the environment and like everything like that. Um this fund did go through, and after this fund went through, General Motors was almost like confused why people chose to go with fund instead of funding their company, because obviously they were trying to get rid of streetcars. Okay, so other conspiracy theories that this conspiracy led to was with how people thought it was improving the environment. They, for some reason, so Los Angeles and California in general is an area prone to wildfires, and people thought that the change in transportation made people purposely cause wildfires. I don't really know where this came about, but after they disproved this conspiracy theory of people purposely causing wildfires, a fire happened right after they disproved the theory, and then the theory came about again, and they thought it was real for the second time. But every conspiracy theory that the Los Angeles and the Red Line led to, they were all about fires and wildfires. And some people said that since red is a color in a fire, that I don't know why they said this, but the red line part of the theory was the fires being caused, even though that was very false. But yeah, I don't really know why people were thinking this. And this is kind of a repeat in information, but And again, this is one of the most known theories to this day. And everybody knows that it really happened. And people are trying to just get the point over that, yes, we drive actual cars instead of streetcars now. Let me see.
Yeah, any questions? So, yeah, and General Motors, I mean, they did help get rid of it. Any questions? All right, good job. Thank you. And thank you for being halfway through. I really appreciate it.
Also, but it is. So, yeah, you can do.
Yeah, thank you. Good job. And one thing, I'll add one more thing to what Alicia said. You know the whole thing about climate change? Climate change. The thing about what's this too, are about cars and fire. More cars, more CO2, more CO2 climate change leads to more fire. So that was part of the element too. And with that, there can only be one thing, since we have a conspiracy in cars, we need to know who's all behind this to get us all to drive cars. And that is, of course, Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
Give me 1 sec. I have all these papers. You want to trying to grade like 7 things at once.
That's really difficult.
Okay, I am ready. Go.
Okay, so Bohemian Grove.
No, yeah, I'm not ready. I lied through my teeth. I'm trying to hide the Bohemian Grove thing. Okay, go.
Yeah, no. So Bohemian Grove, that's what it looked like every day. That's a great photo of that.
That button should go.
Okay, so for history wise, that's really difficult to do because it is still actively ongoing. And the last meeting we have confirmation of like people knowing and what's happening was in 2023. So it's been going on since Ulysses was president. Some of the really like presidents who were really involved with it were Hoover, Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George W. Bush. It's always Nixon. There's a lot of things like big events like the Manhattan Project. A lot of things like that were discussed here when they weren't supposed to be. And there's a lot of political campaigns. One of the big ones being Nixon and Reagan discussing and like spreading rumors so they could have more support for who would get elected because it's always Nixon. He's everywhere. But he was him and Reagan were discussing who would run for president first while they were there. And then there's also a lot of, it's mainly rich political figures, but there's also big people in like music, and then there's also some like big CEOs like General Motors and Standard Oil. The creation of the Bohemian Grove, Henry Edward, which is the guy standing right there, was one of the main founders. There was a couple people who were involved in making it, and there wasn't one in particular, but he was definitely the most vocal in the group throughout the time, and he was one of the first presidents of the board of directors for the Bohemian Grove. That's the address where the Bohemian Grove is held every year, which I looked it up. It's boring. So there's nothing in this.
You're sending a letter?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'll be our next topic.
And during the creation of the Bohemian Grove, the conspiracy is called the Bohemian Grove, but it's actually just the Bohemian Club. That's what they actually go by. They made a bunch of traditions like the cremation ceremony, which is one of the ways that they started the main conspiracy theory of satanic rituals happening behind closed doors. It was a symbol. There was a lot of symbols like the owl of the owl shrine was one of the biggest ones, and bringing. So they would bring something that symbolized life and stress to a giant bonfire while they were all in red robes,
but first they had to bring it to the owl, which like and this little like thing of water that symbolized death, and dip it in there, and then they would take it to the fire and then they'd burn it, and it'd be like they're burning all their stress and worldly troubles into the air so they could be free from it for 2 weeks. It's so it kind of sounds satanic because they're all in red robes and they all are chanting their stresses out loud.
But it's owls.
Yeah, it's very owls. So the owl is like the symbol of their group because it represents knowledge, wisdom, all the things owls represent. They would. There's theories that they thought they were sacrificing bunnies. They weren't, but that's what they thought they were sacrificing. They'd usually get like chicken from the grocery store if they used meat and just use that instead. But bunnies would have just brought olives. They had a bunch of rules, one of them being weeding spiders do not leave here, which basically is the board of the directors saying that we do not want you talking about your political or business deals that you want to go on with. You aren't supposed to be talking to people in a way where you're trying to make connections. This is supposed to be a relaxed musical theater kind of summer camp and it's men's only, so it's rich old men. And it is primarily white men too. They were very, very racist at the beginning. And one of the members was one of the higher up Ku Klux members was one of the board of directors at one point. That one was recently discovered that he was there. So the main conspiracy is because this in itself isn't the biggest conspiracy, but they believe there was satanic rituals going on, which that guy is one of the main reporters who brought the biggest like concern to the public about it. I mean, look at him. He was not fully sober when he was writing some of his articles for it, apparently. And they snuck in as workers to get access to the Bohemian Grove because it's very secretive. And I tried to look up who modern day members are, like who are actively in it, and those are all blocked. So you can't access who like the actual continuous members are. They only release the members after they've died. So, but other than the living sacrifices, they thought they were sacrificing prostitutes for a while as well, which was not happening. There were prostitutes involved, but they were getting paid quite a lot, and they were not being sacrificed to anybody. But the bigger conspiracy is that people thought they were thinking of like the phone calls that were being made, and they thought they were making the new world. They thought they were trying to create the new world, and they were trying to take over the whole world, and this was their like main hub for it. He was in the 2000s. He went in during the 2000s, and there have been a bunch of other. The only time we ever found out what's actually actively happening in it is when we have a reporter sneak in. I think other than him, there was 4 or 5 other reporters who managed to sneak in. The 2023 one, we found out through a lawsuit of a worker there because she was claiming that there was sexual abuse allegations, and then she also wasn't getting paid because they confiscate your phones. You're not allowed to talk to anybody if you're working. You have to stay silent. You can't talk. You can't look at anyone. You have to keep your head down the whole time. So, and they aren't allowed to like listen in on conversations either. So it's really, really strict. And she felt that she was being abused in that sense. So her name is redacted because she did not win the lawsuit, but she tried to sue them for, I think it was a couple billion, but that didn't work.
So who was that guy?
That guy, his name was, oh gosh, what was his name?
You got Alex Jones.
Yeah, Alex, it said it up there, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just making sure.
Alex Jones, yeah.
Yeah, he's very famous for.
He's a heavy right wing, like he reports, he's very right leaning in his beliefs. Yeah. Can it be proved? Is any of this real? So other than journalists investigating things and other infiltrators and what they believe were happening, we don't really have any evidence that any of that actually happened at any point. The only actual part of the conspiracy that we could prove is that the Manhattan Project was discussed during one of the Bohemian Grove meetings. And it did lead to it led to the meeting that eventually created the atomic. Most of the conspiracy is made by misinterpretation of the public and just fear of things like it's rich men talking in a secretive club. So it's everyone's like, oh, they're trying to ruin certain people. There was other ones where someone was like they were discussing assassination attempts and they thought that this is where they were being planned. Was not happening. Other than Alex Jones, I think there was one man named Phillips who he was the person who encouraged the woman to go up and sue in 2023. Yet again, they did not win. Most of the proof, such as like the pictures, were edited. So a lot of the photos of them actually carrying like life sacrifices into a fire are either artistic drawings by the journalists or they're edited severely. The truth, it's a bunch of rich old white men at a music camp because they have people perform. Like one of the big ones was Shakespeare. It's like a theater class in high school, but they don't perform, they just watch. And yeah. The biggest problem that came out that led to the talking of like where they stopped listening to the spiders should not leave here was lakeside talks where it would just you were in a lawn chair by a lake gossiping. It's pretty much what lakeside talks were, but there was a lot of people who like spread the word like, oh, this is them planning things. This is another thing that was big was reptoids. Is people were like, this is the reptoid colony because it's a bunch of rich people. Those are obviously the reptoids. 100% reptoids. This did lead to lasting effects. It's still ongoing. So there have been a couple events such as like the Epstein files and stuff that have led to like more people talking about it again, being like, oh, this is related, like this is part of it. Which they have some connections in like the people involved, but that's pretty much it. Feeling conspiracy culture was pretty much the only thing that's related, and a lot of other conspiracies get connected to this because of the numbers. Protests and activism against people like having them have it be secret. A lot of people don't like that it's secret and they want people to be able to actively have journalists inside, but the current board of directors say that that's kind of the whole point is that there aren't people there reporting everything they say, so it's somewhere where they can just speak their minds and like not have to have a wall up, which I feel like doesn't actually really apply because you're around a bunch of other people who don't wish the best for you at all times. But it's media scrutiny and like mainstream attention that could like fix the conspiracies. And like I said, the New World Order, reptoids, Illuminati, and Epstein files are some of the other conspiracies that were the most connected to this one. From like some of the people were considered reptoids, some of the people were in the Epstein files they're believed to still be actively participating in it. And then the Illuminati, of course, they're one of the main hubs for other conspiracy theorists.
That symbol of the dollar, that's Masons. So nothing fits right into it.
Mm-hmm. And then, my opinion, it is just a summer camp where they're going to get away. They're probably discussing things they shouldn't be in like a private area, but I don't think there's too much going on. There is very strict rules for employment, so it's like abuse is really hard to like there is no real abuse of employees or anything because of how strict it is and how secretive it is. So they don't actually even really get to talk to the members of the groups. But yeah, that's about it.
So, but you know, like ever done as a secret society, people.
It's of course it's the end of the world. They're trying.
And then I don't know if you pointed this out. That's Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That Nixon's everywhere.
Yeah. Everywhere. Any questions? Yeah, the Bohemian Grove is another one of those secret societies. All right, good job. All right. I just want to make sure you got it done. Good, very good. All right, let me see what next one I have up. This is the most exciting time for the people at home. You're gonna watch me get the next presentation.
Yeah, they're cheering, standing.
I didn't get some. Those. Well, it looks like he has dramatic boxing. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. Try a lot.
Oh, like.
Give me one sec.
It's about to.
Come on, since we were.
No, no.
You look a lot.
I mean, he's in all black and white.
All right, let's do a little Mars first.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about why there is definitely life on Mars. I mean,
Give me one sec. Got it. Okay, go.
David Bowie sang a song about it. Which click is it? The left or
Hmm?
to switch the slides?
Yeah, so just hit the left button on the mouse.
I don't know what that's about, but we'll just move on. All right, 1976. There was a lot of fear going on, especially like the Vietnam War. Like, I think there was a lot of distrust in the government. People were like, "Yeah, we don't really trust these guys," and like, I think there was a lot of protests that were kind of going pretty much unanswered, and I feel like that could spark some like need to like find their own answers and like have a need to find out things for themselves and search. They couldn't believe in the government. All right, here's the basic conspiracy. There is an ancient civilization on Mars the government is trying to cover up. And if you look, there's an ominous looking face right there. And that proves without a doubt there's a civilization on Mars.
Okay, done. Next.
For the worlds, this also helps a lot with the Mars conspiracy. I think this is more my theory, but I think that if you were convinced Martians were attacking you, and then you found that they weren't, you might want to believe Martians exist more, because like maybe you feel like that there could be some reasoning behind all the hysteria that was going on. And War of the Worlds was, around that time. So when people found evidence of Martians, they're like, maybe I wasn't that crazy for thinking Martians were attacking. All right, let's talk founders. This is where it gets a little complicated because there's three main schools of thoughts for who founded it. There was the first guy, Giovanni Cipollari, and he basically saw a bunch of channels in Mars when he was looking through his telescope, which he wrote down and he spoke about. But it was misinterpreted as canals, which made people believe that they were man-made, which they were not. And so that kind of sparked the belief. I think that was like early 1800s. And then there's Gilbert Levin. Gilbert Levin was an investigator on NASA for the possibility of life on Mars. He would investigate microorganisms and stuff, but he wanted to believe that there was microorganisms on Mars, but he never stated like intelligent life. And then there was the main founder, Richard Hoagland. Isn't he handsome? He wrote a book about this Mars civilization and this space, and he also started a Star Trek fan club that was able to write a letter to President Gerald Ford, convincing him to rename the space shuttle, the Constitution, to the Enterprise. So isn't that inspiring? He was also abandoned his family for 25 years and arrested for identity theft. So I trust him. He faked his identity, he abandoned his family, and he's a big Star Trek fan. I think he knows what he's talking about. All right. That is undeniably a Martian. That's what they look like. We figured it out. For evidence, I actually do. There's evidence for microorganisms. There's nothing proven, but that the conspiracy is that there is a active civilization on Mars. Now, like billions of years ago, there was a lot of water on Mars, and it had a significantly denser atmosphere. So it is entirely possible that there could have been some forms of life billions and billions of years ago. Right now, though, there is nothing on Mars to prove that it could support any form of life, especially life capable of building structured spaces. So here's why. Mars can't support the life in its current state, and this eerie face when it was kind of developed more just looks like this. But we as humans do this thing where when we look at like a shape or a cloud or something, we see a shape in there when it doesn't actually mean anything. It's called pareidolia, and there's no conspiracy about clouds, but there is about this one face. And interestingly, the conspiracy doesn't bring up any of the other ones, like George Washington. He's a Mars structure. I don't know why he's not brought up. You can see he's screaming. He's not very happy to be on Mars. There's also Kermit the Frog. He's not brought up at all in the theory, which I think is super. And my favorite one, the bear. There's a bear on Mars. And weirdly, that's not brought up in Mars either. This all just goes to show that we see shapes and things. One of those things with a human face. I'm really sad that they didn't bring up the bear or Kermit or any of the other things in the theory. So I made my own theory. Basically, life on Mars could have very well existed. This is another one of the pretty faces. He's very happy. He's very happy to be there. Life on Mars is really just a conspiracy. I believe microorganisms very well could exist on there, but definitely nothing that could build a civilization or build faces. So here's the real truth. Clearly, the only answer based on all the structures we've seen is that there is a civilization of bears living on Mars. They are led by none other than Kermit the Frog, and the goal to contact the ghost of George Washington. You can see this through the structures, but there is one more force leading them on. Force we have seen a lot. Force in the background of everything. The rabbits. They're everywhere.
Perfect sense. God, you convinced me. Wait, where did those pictures come from?
Which ones?
Like the face on the.
Oh, those are all just been like taken by rovers or by NASA satellites.
And there's Viking 1 went there early 7.
Mhm.
So all these pictures came back, and that's why 76.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. It took all of those pictures of like George Washington and Kermit the Frog, but they only focused on the face, which I think is really.
Yeah.
I'm just sad they didn't include the bear in there. Like, if
Love it.
you're gonna make a conspiracy here, at least include the bear. Come on.
Yeah. And that's where they would try to hide it from us. Any questions?
Yes.
All right, you got plenty of rabbits, so very good. All right, thank you. All right, let's get. If there's only one thing we can get to this. Paul is dead. Hey, we're not cheering this.
No, you cheer, guys.
Are we happy?
Okay.
I'm very sad. Got a lot of money.
Oh, I know, guys. This is really intense. Okay. So basically, there is a conspiracy theory that Paul died in 1966 in a car accident. Now, they say that he was really angry with his bandmates and he was driving back from the studio and got distracted by a meter maid named Rita, or he picked up a hitchhiker named Rita, didn't see the traffic lights change, crashed, and then was decapitated. There's songs, so those 3 things in the parentheses are all 3 songs that they have been using as evidence for this. My personal favorite is the meter maid. And so the article that exposed his death was written in September 17th of 1969. There were like rumors in 1966 and whispers because people were questioning his health, but it didn't gain serious traction until 1969 when a university student named Tim Harper at Drake University in Iowa wrote an article. And to my understanding, he did believe in the conspiracy. But the real reason that it really catapulted is because it was a decade marked by such extreme paranoia, especially like it was 1966 to 1969. There was the Vietnam War happening, the assassination of JFK in 63, just a lot of distrust in the government. And then there was also like the My Lai massacre specifically that was exposed in 1968. So it was like shown that the government was covering up things, which I think scared people a lot. Cold War was still going. And then there was also the anti-establishment movement, which is characterized by like generalized anger of and like distrust and discontent with political elites and institutions. So that all really, really contributed to this. So yeah, he wrote this wonderful article. This is where a lot of the evidence spurred from. There's a lot of really, really silly things in this one, like his commentary on how feminine Paul McCartney is and how John Lennon is now taking on that role. Things about walruses, but I won't get into all of that. But just so fun. Couldn't find the other pages, wish I could. Um, so then the other thing that really perpetuated this was the radio stations. So on October 12th of 1969, a caller called WKNR-FM, which was in and they told this disc jockey, which is basically someone who just played music and such, that named Russ Gibb, that Paul was dead. And the thing is that Gibb wanted his little minute of fame. And so he talked about it for a while, and he kind of gave his own clues that weren't really based on anything, but he heavily influenced it. And then this caused this guy named Fred Laborde, who was a sophomore at University of Michigan, to write an article. Now, Fred Laborde was not being serious. He just wanted a little bit of a gig, okay? But Fred Laborde wrote this article a few days after this like hour-long conversation with Russ Gibb and callers from all over the place. And people took it really seriously, and they did not think that it was a joke. And Fred Laborde still apologizes to this day and is like, guys, I did not mean to do this. Like, this was all lies. I made all of this up. Didn't think you guys would believe this. Like, it was a total joke. And then other radio stations also picked up this so that they could have their little minute of fame. There was one in New York. There was two in New York that were the comment, and then there was also one in Buffalo. And yeah, it was just mostly like they covered the rumor all over the radio stations, and like people from other countries also called in. Like I think it was 38 states and a couple other countries. There's a lot of people. Okay, and then how the Beatles covered it up. So they said that the Beatles replaced him with a winner of a lookalike contest. Now, stick with me here, okay? In Laborde's article, which was a complete joke, he said that it was an orphan from Edinburgh named William Campbell. But then people were like, no, it's this guy named Billy Shepherd. And then they changed that and they were like, no, it's Billy Shears. Have any of these people been proven to exist? No. But don't question that. Billy Shears was actually the alter ego of Ringo Starr in the song With a Little Help from My Friends. So I think that's really silly. And the other thing is just like continuing distrusting the government is the British government. They say instigated it because they didn't want the public to be hurt by the news since the Beatles were so incredibly popular. And so they said they were leaving hints in their music and like on their covers and such. So starting off with Sgt. Pepper's, a wonderful album. Now, I beg the question. You see that patch on Paul McCartney's arm? You see that? The circle thing? So that says OPD, they say, which supposedly stands for officially pronounced dead. Now so it did actually say OPP, which was Ontario Provincial Police, but they really ran with that. So that one was really important. They also claimed that since on the back of the album, Paul was the only one facing away, that meant he was dead. He's also playing a black instrument, which is a type of oboe. But because it's a black instrument, that means he's dead. And then also, since they're wearing uniforms, that means it's a military style, which must mean a funerary motif. And there's another one that Ringo Starr is like leaning over a grave with flowers at one point, and they make like that is also Paul being dead. So that one's just so fun. Abbey Road attire. Okay, this one's delightful. So you see George Harrison here. He's wearing denim. Now, what do you think that means? Obviously, that means he's the grave digger. Okay, this is all aside. Next, Paul McCartney. Lots of things to be discussed here. I will follow up on him. But just like you just look at that and make some thoughts yourself. And then there's Ringo Starr. Now he's wearing black. This could mean so many things. Obviously, this is funeral attire, or he's the Undertaker. Okay, so like, I know. And then you have John Lennon, and he's in a white suit, which people have come up with a lot of ideas of what that meant. So they say he could either he's like the preacher. Some people really think he's the preacher, and then some people also say that white is a color of mourning in some Eastern religions. So that's what that means. Now, okay, Paul McCartney is out of step with the other Beatles. That means he's dead. Paul McCartney is also left-handed, but is holding a cigarette in his right hand. Is he doing this just so the camera can see the cigarette? No, it's because he was replaced with a right-handed person named William Campbell or Billy Shears. So that one's just so delightful. He's also barefoot. Now I know, okay? Some cultures bury the dead without shoes. So that's what that means. He totally didn't say in interviews that he just didn't like his sandals and they were uncomfortable and he took them off. Don't think that. Now, I know you guys didn't notice this in the background, but there's a Volkswagen Beetle with the license plate that says LNW 28 if. It technically says 28-1F, but we'll talk about that later. But basically what they said is that it said 28 if because if he were alive, he would be 28. He actually would have been 27, but don't ask questions. The LMW was used to say that it stood for Linda McCartney Weeps, which I think is so silly. So that one's also super fun. And then
His wife.
yeah, his wife. And then there's the Strawberry Fields Forever and A Day in the Life. So there's like specific songs that they analyze that are very popular, these two being some of them. So there's this outro in Strawberry Fields that conspiracy theorists claimed said, I buried Paul. It actually said cranberry sauce. But that's that's debatable. But a lot of the music, the interpretations is the fans were reading into it so much, especially with like the rise of artists like Bob Dylan who are adding all this like deeper meaning to their musical lyrics, and people were trying to find that in the Beatles songs, except some of the lyrics just didn't make sense because they were doing psychedelic drugs. And their fans were doing psychedelic drugs, and then it's like, you can add meaning to anything at that point. And then also A Day in the Life has like an intro where all four of the Beatles have like their own little parts, and Lennon talks about there's one line specifically which is he blew his mind out in a car, and people say that that's a reference to Paul McCartney dying. It actually wasn't. It was a reference to the death of a young socialite named Tara Brown who died in a car crash, but they're gonna say no. So yeah. And then there's the walrus. Okay, the walrus is great. So basically, in 1968, Lennon had this song, right? And he has his lyrics, which I will play you guys the song so you can hear it because it's wonderful. But so he was writing in response to fans who were reading too much into the meaning of their songs in Sgt. Pepper's, which came out in 1967. And he like publicly said in interviews that he thought it was really annoying. And so Lennon was basically just messing with people because he's such a silly guy. And he was like, I want to see what they do with this information. But then when it became popular in 1969, people used this song as a reference for the Paul is dead conspiracy theory. Now, you see these costumes, right? So obviously, since he said the walrus was Paul, that means because that's the only dark colored costume that he's dead. So actually, Lennon was the walrus, and in the Magical Mystery Tour musical film they came out with later on, and Paul was actually the hippo. But no, I guess not. And then also they said, specifically in the article that Tim Harper wrote from Drake University, he said that the walrus is a symbol for death in Viking culture. That's just wonderful. And then I have the song. It's a little
Let's
loud.
try again. Wait.
Okay.
Try again. Yeah.
So obviously, that's what that means. You can stop playing. So Paul is obviously dead. And then there's the White Album. So there are 2 songs in the White Album that were heavily referenced. One being Revolution 9, which was they reversed the intro of this of the lyrics number 9, and they said that it sounded like Turn Me On, Dead Man. So that means he's dead. And then also their song I'm So Tired, they reversed this line that's Monsieur, 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 how about another one? And they said it sounded like Paul is dead, miss him, miss him, miss him, which I have. So you guys can all listen to it. How ominous, right?
That's the backwards.
Yeah, so that's once they would
Obviously.
reverse it. John Lennon didn't really appreciate that either. Which I think was pretty fun. So those 2 songs were also heavily referenced. And then the effects and rebuttal of it, it's absolutely not true. People went on to also say that there was like absolute proof because their skull measurements were different, but they were using pictures to measure his skull. So obviously that means he's dead. And then Paul also actually faced so much harassment for it, and I feel really bad for him because no matter what he did, it was going to perpetuate the conspiracy. He did he did an interview with this guy named Chris Drake on his farm, his family's farm in Scotland, and he thought that he said in hopes that people hearing his voice would see the light, but it did not work. And then people started secretly filming him. So CBS News secretly filmed him on the farm as well. He was on the farm hanging with his family, and he looked scruffy and unshaven, and so they said that he didn't look like the actual Paul. And so they said that's proof. And then also Life magazine also intruded and was like secretly watching him, except this one he fought back. So he threw a bucket of water over them and was swearing at them and attempting to hit the photographer, which was captured on film. However, he agreed to do a pose and answer a few questions if they didn't release that film. So that film is not available because of this wonderful photo right here is available. And then yeah, he does not look happy. And then the other thing, the one positive thing that did come out of it is that in 1969 they had such a boost in sales for the Beatle catalog albums, and 2 of their albums, being Sgt. Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour, went back on the Billboard Top LPs charts after being off of them for months. So that was really cool, but it was just like Americans being really on edge about their government and also just not understanding how psychedelic drugs don't mean everything has a really cool meaning behind it, and he's obviously dead. So I said that I believe this conspiracy was sparked from the uncertainty of the time, but also was heavily influenced by the rising use of psychedelic drugs and Lennon's slight encouragement for theorists to find clues that never existed. So yeah, Paul is dead.
Any questions?
Any questions?
That's pretty amazing that he really is touring. He's gonna be playing tomorrow night at another place.
But he's not.
I'm sorry, William Campbell is.
Or
Or
Billy
Billy
Shears.
Would you get line in the, yeah, all right, good job, thank you. Bring it up tomorrow, these have been great. And let's, Sid, do you have time? I'm kidding. Sydney, do you have time?
Oh, no.
Oh, sure, you got a minute. And by the way, I'm not saying this is a coincidence, but I am blaming Rowan for that whole psychedelic drug thing.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Yeah? Huh? Yeah.
Sydney's fault. No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Sydney. It is Sydney.
I'm just.
You brought up all the
Oh,
others.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And I haven't heard the end of it.
Hey, nice job, everybody. We'll pick it up tomorrow.
Yeah, mine also. I'm so lost.
It
Like,
is.
it's so serious, and it's just like this. They'll just say things and then just be like, think about that. No more evidence.
Well, I'm.
And that's the thing. That's how so many conspiracy theories in it. It's so patently ridiculous. Making it funny. Great job, everybody. We'll pick it up tomorrow. I'm glad. These are fun. Everyone's doing well. Don't got a lot of pressure on the rest. You got to go tomorrow. I win. Ready? We go first? Okay, go. First.
I was happy you knew the fact that Richard Coleman convinced Gerald Ford to change the name of Thompson.
I did not, you told me that, I didn't know that.
That's so funny.
I knew it was like people like asked for it, but I didn't know it was the same guy who did the face on Mars.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea. The Enterprise, I told you about the Enterprise, that was the mock, the first
Yeah.
practice one. It's
I
out,
think it was because it was named after.
it's on the Intrepid, which is a aircraft carrier in New York, which is now a museum. You go look at it, and space shuttles are huge.
In the Enterprise.
Field trip,
Huh? In the Enterprise.
no. No, all the Enterprise, they didn't even, all it was is basically to make sure that there's a test one.
Right.
So they just kind of let it
So maybe that's
land.
why They're more willing to let Sky.
Yeah,
I just think it's so funny because he got arrested for identity theft. People still were like, yeah, no,
well,
this
people
guy knows
knew
what
he
he's talking.
knew the secret. They're trying to kill him. He's hiding with William Campbell right now.
The bear.
Goodbye.
And the
Goodbye, everybody. You're giving them all.
But it's all my recipes.
Oh, different.
Okay. So it's the same resources for.
Sounds good. You don't have a degree. You can't ring the bell. I am Reeds. I'm pretty cool. Was the meeting in that room?
Actually, tomorrow, he created, I sabotage.
You have enough,
Typical. Huh?
you have enough degrees to lend me one.
All right. That was a good one. Good Paul. The walrus was Paul.
Classic.
Squids too.
Oh, yeah.
All yours. Jar. Oh, it's a rope. You're a rock.
You got
Mary.
I
Yeah.
was in respiratory therapy. It was actually really fun. The guy there was super nice.
You're in reptoid therapy?
Yeah, respiratory therapy. We were intubating losers.
Frisbee. Well played. Show. Oh. Got all the wait. Running in. Always gotta be ready.
There's not good rocks. You could almost go over them. Did you see these? I love this. And goes, what's with all the red? I love it. Wait, where did that?
Whatever, the info bars we started.
So I see that you're.
I made a post to my face. Yeah, it's like, oh no. It's almost like that's why we made fucking videos. Jack, you agree this video is stupid.
Jack, since you follow the announcement. The mom made me like apologize about saying they have to go to special. Like,
No, we did, I did like one of the.
no, I saw this.
It's bloody.
We can keep talking about Maybe you did. I think that's all.
I was at Oak Farm looking about finance. Running.
Yeah. It's gonna bend about the bounce of it. It's, I didn't want it. We'll see it again.
Yeah. I would have forgotten.
How was it? Probably. On the floor, no floor, everybody. Okay, I have good news for all of you. Quiz tomorrow. Calm down, calm down. I'm looking at 12 questions.
Yeah, you were promised.
How about add them together, 8,012. Go for it. That's how you do 80 plus 12, 8,012. Now, most of it will be on the pages 423 to 445, but I'm adding 3 from chapter 9. 3. Are you ready for the 3? I'm going to tell you right now. Don't be too excited. Hold the bell, Glenn. Gotta start over?
Yeah. I forgot what you said.
I already forgot it.
Yeah.
My brain's turned off with relevance.
Your brain is off.
Yeah, the capital.
3. It's 3 court cases. The Dartmouth versus Woodward. So Dartmouth, McCulloch, Gibbons. Dartmouth versus Woodward, McCulloch versus Maryland, Gibbons versus Ogden. Dartmouth, McCulloch, Maryland. Dartmouth, McCulloch, Gibbons. Everyone hear that? One more time. Dartmouth versus Woodward with its contracts. McCulloch versus Maryland, implied powers. Gibbons versus Ogden, interstate commerce. That's all it's gonna be, just very simple, 3 court cases, and then there'll be like 9 other matches. Sound good? And then 6 short IDs and essay. I have a lot of graded. I have like 1 if you're class graded. Yeah.
Oh.
And I had to try.
Oh.
I couldn't. So I had a bunch graded. The thing is, I graded a bunch, and then my eyes start spinning. I can only grade so many at a time, and they kind of get fewer every year. So, where were we? So tomorrow or next week, we have to have a small unit test, like 10 multiple choice, and I'll put some matching. That'll be it. Most you don't take about 20 minutes. And then we start the next unit. We will have another essay in class in a few weeks, couple weeks. Now do another one. It's called a DBQ. All right, let's go take your notes out. Where do we finish here? Because all 3 of my classes are now mixed up. Corrupt bargain? All right, let's backtrack. What was the compromise? What was the compromise that alleviated the threat of civil war, at least for a while in 1820? Yeah, the Missouri Compromise. Missouri's a slave state. What came in as a free state? What came in? Maine. Don't look where I'm pointing. Maine. Yeah, good job. Spain and Mexico. Next. No slavery north of what line in the Missouri Compromise? 3630. Yeah, 3630, which soon they'll just talk about 3630 as like this almost religious line, and definition of the section was, even though it only applied to here. That's a huge area. And who was the senator? Got the sash on, okay. Who was the senator who broke the bill up? Yeah, Henry Clay, the great compromiser. And remember, the South now is going to be desperate to try to get more slave states. Just to repeat, the issue that led to civil war, the trigger, was the spread of slavery into the territories. Because the South, these southern states, desperately wanted more slave states to get more senators, more slavery to protect slavery. So we got to this, didn't we?
Yes. Right. We got to corrupt bargain.
So we got to the corrupt bargain.
Yeah.
And who was the vice president? John C. Calhoun. Have anybody thought about growing neck hair?
Yeah, I'm working.
You name the class. You come back with neck hair, you get 5 points extra credit in that class. Any class. Any class. I don't make the rules. Some of you might have easier time, harder time. I don't. I've tried many times to grow neck hair.
How dare you say that?
It's so awful. Look at those eyes, people. All right, moving on. So we got the Krupp bargain. It flashed by very quickly. What position did Clay get? What position did Clay get? Secretary of State. So let's get to Jackson. So Krupp bargain was the last thing we wrote down. Jackson supporters made sure that Adams' administration was kind of a failure. Virtually everything he wanted did not pass. We're not going to go into details of Adams' administration, just know that did not go well for him. And Jackson's supporters coalesced around him. They started calling themselves the Democracy, the Democratic Party. They still technically were Republicans, but the next election will be a repeat. Adams versus Jackson again. And that last election shows why there's only two parties. Winner take all always goes to two parties. If there's more than two parties, the vote is divided up, diffused. Either you don't get a majority or you take away votes from somebody else. That is why in the United States of America today, because we're winner take all, we're stuck with two parties. Just another reason you'll see it. They'd have to change it to some kind of proportional system. It could happen, but probably not till every state did it. And here's Adams again, and do you see it? I looked at that picture and I had to add something. Because what does he look like?
He looks like
You're close. Frog, I see amphibian, but I see a salamander.
Oh, yeah.
See, look at that. Isn't that just, look. It's almost the same thing. Yeah, you can't argue with that. So that tells us two things. First off, how many chambers does he have in his heart?
Subs.
3. This is science, people. Amphibians only have 3 chambers in their hearts. So he's only 3. And what's the other thing? Huh? I'm not sure, but he's obviously related to the reptoids. Reptilian shapeshifters are going to take over the world. You can't argue with that. Look at it one more time.
What animal has 2 chambers of the heart?
What does?
What animal? I don't know. I'm asking you.
Fish?
Yes, actually.
So, this was a nasty campaign, but the most important issue that, that had direct effect on people was the tariff. So, there was an approximately a 25% tariff. And from 1816, and the plan was to double it. Actually, more than double it. The tariff on textiles was over 40%. So actually it went up to nearly 70% tariff on textiles. So the point is to dramatically increase the tariff. And this was a trick by Jackson supporters, which I'm going to just call Democrats now. And the trick was this. Adams said he was a supporter of the American system, wanting to increase the tariff. But they raised it so high, they were trying to trap Adams. If he voted for the tariff, he would be responsible for raising prices dramatically with the tariff for all people, and therefore lose votes. Or if he doesn't sign it, they'll say he's a hypocrite and doesn't really support what he says he's going to. And it was a really crude trick. Many of the same Democrats who stopped everything else he wanted to pass, all of a sudden voted for it, and had always been against tariffs. It was really crude. But Adams fell for it. He's like, okay, I want a tariff, I'm going to sign it. So it passed, and the Democrats then turned around and said, this is no regular tariff. This shows how evil Adams is. This is the tariff of abomination. Like, pretty cool, huh? Yeah.
They actually
Take a picture of it. The tariff of abominations. And it was mostly in textiles, that's the textile bill. Now, I tried to find a graph that showed tariffs from the tariff of abomination through today. I couldn't find one. Because tariffs went way down. Here's abominations, post-Civil War tariffs. The infamous Holly Smoot tariff in the middle of the Depression, that was a disaster. And the tariffs were really low until, of course, President Trump. And so I have one here, President Trump. And the thing about it is tariffs raise all prices. All prices go up with tariff. Importers pay the taxes, and the taxes they pass on to the consumers. And that's why prices are going up pretty fast right now. There's a pretty big price increase in some things. Part of the problem is that the economy is kind of getting bad and people aren't buying stuff. But here is post-Civil War. It's somewhere up here, but a lot of people are avoiding the tariffs and there's all kinds of exceptions. So we're just not exactly sure what the effective tax rate is at this moment because the government shut down. But let me tell you one thing very quickly about this, because we're mentioning tariffs, and so I have to mention what's happening right now, happened today. So President Trump is using a law from 1973 for the president to deal with economic emergencies. And when he became president, he declared his economic state of emergency. And then using that law, he put in tariffs. Because the president can't raise taxes. It has to be a law. But he says, they gave me this law. Now, the law does not say the president can issue tariffs. He just said, it's an emergency, so I'm gonna do what I want. And 2 courts found that to be unlawful. And so they're literally debating it. They literally debated it this morning in the Supreme Court. And so the president was defending this process and they went there. The Supreme Court is pretty pro actions of President Trump, in fact, very pro actions. But they sound like they're very questioning this because the law is so clear, it doesn't say tariffs. So we'll see. I should add that when it came out this way, President Trump kind of had a few little fits of anger about that. But he's been angry today. One thing about modern technology, especially the way President Trump uses it, we found out a lot about his moods all the time.
Yeah.
So let's get to the other issue. They called Jackson a brutal murderer and slaveholder, which he was a brutal slaveholder. But the biggest issue was a dirty trick played on him by Adams supporters, which I'm going to call Whigs, even though they weren't called Whigs quite yet. Rachel Jackson, Jackson's wife, was a divorcee. Now, this was at a time where women could, almost impossible for a woman to get a divorce. And heck, it would be hard for women to get a divorce until the 1970s unless the man wanted one. Doesn't matter how abusive the marriage could be, for example. And he left, she basically left her husband and then finally got a divorce. And Jackson met her where she had left him, but the divorce was not yet final. Here's the divorce decree. And they have it filled out by their lawyers, all sent out, and for the judge to sign, essentially. And they assumed he signed it, and so they got married. Here's a wood carving of Rachel and Jackson being married. This is at them, as a relatively young man and woman. Well, as it turned out, the judge didn't sign until a week after they were married. And so, not only was there a taint of a woman being a divorcee, which implied somehow that she was corrupted or wrong. But think about the next step. She was still married. So they were committing adultery. She's big in herself. She got married. Here's from a Whig campaign thing. A convicted adulteress, and her paramour husband be placed in the highest office of this free and Christian land. They attacked her without mercy, claiming that she is tainted and that she is immoral. It also shows that Jackson is immoral, and it shows when you let that kind of people become president. Those kind of people. What they did is they used class. They used class. Commoners are immoral. Hey, that's why they're commoners. That's why they're poor. They're moral failings. That's why they're lower class. How can we ever allow them to be president? And Jackson was furious about this. And the entire time they've been married, people have attacked him, or attacked Rachel because of this, and said horrible things about it to her. And she was already ill, and she passed away soon after the election. And Jackson always blamed Adams and the people like that for her death.
That is the locket. I hear that's the locket he carried with her for the rest of his life. Because he lived for another 17 years. And so it was just unbelievable what they did to Rachel, but it was class. It was all class. Look at those commoners and how they act. If you know anything about the elite aristocracy, yeah, they're really moral. Any more moral than anybody else. One more thing. She worked for a time in a tavern. Now, a tavern, don't think of a bar. Think of like more like a restaurant. Yes, you get alcohol, but also you get rooms for people to stay the night. But if a woman worked there, it was a whispering campaign. But that is. Yeah, prostitute. No, by no means. But that's what they said, because that's the way those kind of women are. So Jackson is furious, but that part did not work. When the election finally happened, 1828 on the right, and you notice it's two maps. You can see all the different colors for the different states. Why we're kind of stuck with two party, because it's all divided in 1824. 1828, Jackson won a big election. Now remember, the popular vote doesn't matter, but more and more members of more and more voters are picking. I'm trying to do two things at the same time. More and more voters are picking the electors. Look how many more voters. That's a pretty stark figure. There was a lot more suffrage, and Jackson pushed for this, wanted this, represented this.